cost of living in America is far too high.
The American dream is dying. I don't even know where to start.
Right? But let's stop saying that we make $300K and can't afford to live in Seattle, because that is not true, honey.
As a Londoner living in the US, this is the greediest country I have ever lived in. As a Londoner living in the US, this is the greediest country I have ever lived in. So here's a list of things I've had to pay for which make no sense and would send the European mind into absolute psychosis. Let's kick it off strong with number one. I pay processing fees for my rent. I pay my rent and then I pay $6 to process my rent. Why am I paying you money to take my money? Now the next thing is I didn't realize how expensive healthcare actually is. But one day I had a really bad toothache and I went to the emergency room. First mistake. They scanned my insurance card, put me in a queue, and when I finally get to see a doctor, he looks at my tooth and says, yeah, we can't actually help you. You need to go see a dentist tomorrow morning. I said, cool. 2 weeks go by, I get my bill. $600. Luckily, I had insurance, so I paid $120. But think about this for a second. I paid $120 for a doctor to tell me he can't help me. Now, this one takes me off beyond my imagination. I stayed at the Intercontinental Hotel in Chicago, stayed there for 2 nights for around $200 a night, plus I paid for valet parking. But when I got my bill, the numbers just weren't adding up. On top of all the money and taxes I paid, they still charged me a $32 resort fee. What is a resort fee? And when I'm asking the receptionist what is a resort fee, nobody can answer my question. And what's even worse is it's not a flat fee, it's $32 per night. Now, the next one was kind of annoying. I got my car towed, $350. Pro tip, do not let your car stay there overnight. Now the next one is tip culture, and since living here I've learned to leave a 10% tip. But think about this for a second. Your boss is so greedy that he doesn't pay you not a livable wage, doesn't pay you a survivable wage, then guilt trips us, his customers, into covering the rest of your wage for you. The level of greed you need to have to even think of that concept is literally something only Mr. Krabs would do. Now honestly guys, this list is 25 things long, so if you want to see a part 2 or you like content on finance, make sure to drop me a follow. Peace.
Y'all will never convince me that an apartment that was made in 1976 with no updates, no new appliances, no new flooring is now worth $1,800 a month when it used to be $400.
It would take $400,000 to $500,000 in household income to live the super comfortable, almost close to luxury lifestyle here in New York City. Now, this is based on what a lot of you think a super comfortable lifestyle should be, and that you can do it on $100,000. Well, the $100,000 is probably more like $400,000 or $500,000, and that's so you can be in a prime location, an affluent neighborhood. We'll just use Manhattan as an example, to where you have a 0 commute to your job, or it's super short. Also, you get to save. Everyone in the household gets to save. Everyone gets to save for retirement. You get to send your child to the most amazing school and build their future. In addition to that, you get to have 3 or 4 bedrooms, and not only 3 or 4 bedrooms, but it's updated, a modern building, and you also get a lot of space. You already know you do not get a lot of space in New York without paying premium price for that. And the list goes on. Maybe you get to do a vacation to reset and get yourself in a good mental place. So could you live in New York for way less than that as a family and feel comfortable? 100%. But again, it's all subjective to you and if you think that's comfortable or not.
The American dream is dying. I don't even know where to start. Right now, you've got roughly 60% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. Last month alone, there was 38,000 foreclosure filings in the United States. So if you have a dream of someday owning a house on some land and just living that good life, let me show you reality. The median household income in the United States is $85,000. And to simplify things even more, I'm not even going to talk about purchasing a house. We're just going to talk about renting for now. And since rent is a fixed cost, the general rule of thumb from all the finance gurus out there is that your rent payment should not exceed 30% of your pre-tax income. So at $85,000, that's $2,125 a month. However, this rule was developed in 1969 by public housing regulations, which capped a tenant's rent at 25% of their income before increasing it to about 30% by the 1980s before eventually just becoming a general finance guideline. But this is actually super outdated, and the more accurate framework is the 50-30-20 rule. And this says that 50% of your income should go to needs such as housing, utilities, groceries, transportation costs, things that you need. And then 30% goes to wants such as streaming services, eating out, entertainment, going to the movies. And then the last 20% goes to savings. And this is accounting for after-tax income. So if you make the median household income of $85,000, you're taxed about 11%, which means your actual take-home pay is only around $75,000. In the United States, the average grocery cost, the average monthly grocery cost for a couple, not even like a family with kids, just a couple, is anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a month. And the average utility cost nationally is around $600 a month, including electricity, water, gas, sewage, and internet. And we haven't even factored in transportation costs, which AAA estimates at around $1,000 a month on average. And this is counting everything from car payments to gas to maintenance for your vehicles. So already, before you've even found a place to rent, you're already spending $2,100 to $2,600 a month just on basic necessities. Which means if you follow the 50-30-20 rule, you're left with anywhere from $500 to $1,000 to find a place to rent. So yeah, if you're wondering how someone that makes $85,000, $90,000 a year is living paycheck to paycheck, that's how.
But let's stop saying that we make $300K and can't afford to live in Seattle, because that is not true, honey. I mean, if you lie online, I'm gonna say something. I can't stand a liar. Like, I always get, I don't know what it is, but I get the cost of living videos all the time for Seattle, and like, people just lie. Seattle is expensive because it's a city. It doesn't have to be as expensive as these people are making it out to be. I'm gonna use myself as an example. We are moving back into a luxury high-rise in a desirable neighborhood in Seattle. Including our parking and utilities is $3,500 a month, and we live like at the 20th, above the 20th floor. So like, when people get on here and they're like, oh, it's so expensive, it's so expensive, my apartment's like, it's $4,000 a month, it's $5,000 a month. I'm like, my choice, right? Your apartment better be 1,500 square feet if it's $5,000 a month. If it is by choice and you're like, oh, it's so expensive, I'm struggling. If you don't go get an apartment with a white fridge and get the fuck off of this internet. We could have moved into a 1-bedroom that was like, no joke, including parking, like $2,500 a month, and in a desirable neighborhood in Seattle, but we didn't want to. But I'm not gonna get up on this internet and lie to you guys and complain and like, oh, I can't afford it, because like, if we couldn't afford it, we wouldn't do it. Do you get me?
The cost of living in America is far too high. The Trump tariffs are adding thousands of dollars of additional expenses to everyday Americans. Right now, rents out of control. Right now, housing prices out of control. Right now, electricity bills skyrocketing. Right now, grocery costs out of control. Right now. And because of the Republican refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, as Marjorie Taylor Greene herself has acknowledged, tens of millions of people are about to experience dramatically increased health insurance costs. How is that acceptable in the wealthiest country in the history of the world? It's not.
Property taxes also don't make sense to me. So you're telling me I buy the house after 40 years, 30 years, whatever, 50 years, I finally own the house. Awesome. I paid off and I own the house. Great. But I still have to pay property taxes on the house because the property that the house is on is never going to be mine. I'm going to have to pay for that forever. And if I stop paying for it, the house can get taken away from me, right? And listen, I don't own a house, so y'all who own houses, let me know. But that's how it is, right? So if you stop paying for the property taxes over, a certain amount of time, the house gets taken away from you and it can get, repossessed, right? And get sold again. So all that money that I already put into the house, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, however much, is just gone. That's it, right? But in the same breath, once let's say I am paying all my bills and I'm paying my property taxes, I still have to ask the state permission if I want to build certain things in my backyard, like if I want to build like a shed, right? In certain communities, this is true, not making it up, you have to ask the state permission. If you want to cut down certain trees, you have to ask the state permission.
$5,600.
$5,600? Do you live in New York?
Yes.
And how much do you pay for rent?
I'm in the East Village. It's a 4-bed, 1-bath. 2,000.
2,000?
I live with my girlfriend. Pay $3,800.
$3,800?
It's in Clinton Hill, Bed-Stuy area.
And how many bedrooms?
2 with a patio loft.
Gramercy Park, 1-bedroom.
How much would you say you spend a month in New York City?
Probably $10K.
Hey, and what do you do?
I do design. I do visual design.
I work at a tech startup.
Small business, electrical services.
Do you have advice for people who want to move to New York?
No advice. Do whatever you want. Do what you want to do. Move here. or not?
I guess just like spend time with yourself.
Expenses can get pretty out of control pretty quickly. So yeah, I would just say be true to your budget and what you can afford and stick to it.
I've really been thinking about just how bad the economy is becoming in the United States and just how unaffordable life is becoming for so many people in this country. And I mostly have been thinking about this one conversation I had with my elderly neighbor back when I lived in California. And he told me back when he was in college in the 70s, he rented a bedroom in like a larger 6-bedroom house or something like that. And it was in Palo Alto. He had a bedroom in Palo Alto, and his rent was along the lines of $30 for the entire month. And back then, minimum wage was maybe around $2. So $30 over $2, that's 15 hours that you had to work before you could afford rent for the entire month. That was it. It was a 6-bedroom house, and he said, I think rent was split pretty evenly. So 6 times 30, that's 180. 180 divided by 2, 90 hours. 90 hours of work in order to afford rent for the entire month. Oh, give or take, that's about 2 weeks and 2 days of work. Now, if you brought that to today with how high prices have gone up, and we're taking into account Palo Alto, okay, a 6-bedroom house in Palo Alto, I'm gonna do a nice guesstimate. This is gonna be a very, very, very low guesstimate. I'm guessing it would be $10,000 a month. It probably is way more than that. Minimum wage in California right now is $16.90. 10,000 over 16.90. I did the math. I did it, put it in the calculator. At least 591 hours. Minimum wage is supposed to allow people to work and still afford their own place. And so many people in the United States, a majority, I would say, cannot afford their own apartments, and much less like buying a home. Okay, if you say that people shouldn't be allowed to buy homes, they should still be able to rent their own homes. And if they can't even rent a studio to live by themselves on minimum wage where they live, life is unaffordable. It doesn't make sense. I remember my mom told me and actually showed me the apartment, the flat that she rented for her entire family back when she immigrated to San Francisco in the 70s. And it was one big 3-bedroom flat, the entire level, like the second floor or something. And this was in kind of Tender Knob, okay? Nob Hill Tenderloin. Not a great place back then. Okay right now. But back then, she said rent was $300 a month. Knowing the location, I would guess an apartment like that would go for minimum $5K a month. If you're looking at the price inflation of rent and regular costs like food, it doesn't make sense as to why minimum wage is not catching up, and it's not proportionally also inflating at the same time. Why? Also thinking about it, if everything was proportional to how prices have inflated over these years, I would have been able to afford a house by now, by myself. But no, I actually will never. I don't think I'll ever be able to buy a house on my own and own property because everything's just so goddamn expensive. Don't even get me started on those goddamn HOAs either. I'm just gonna rent for the rest of my life, I guess, or marry rich. I'm gonna have to do that.
So apparently, nearly half of Americans burn through their paycheck within 48 hours of getting paid. And before people start screaming, stop buying coffee or learn discipline, listen to where the money is actually going. Rent, grocery, gas, utilities, late fees, overdraft fees. Y'all seeing the pattern? Now, this article I read said most people aren't even spending crazy. They're just trying to survive long enough to make it to their next paycheck. And honestly, that's the part don't nobody want to talk about. We have a generation that's working full-time jobs but living in survival mode. You get paid, bills instantly hit, your accounts get drained, then you spend the next 2 weeks waiting for a deposit. That right there is not freedom. That's financial survival. Now, Gen Z and millennials are getting hit the hardest because everything costs more and wages have barely moved. And people are wondering why anxiety, depression, and burnout are through the roof. How are people supposed to save money when most of their check already belongs to bills before they even touch it? You're getting paid just to give the money right back. The craziest part is that this article said many people aren't even irresponsible. The timing of the system itself is hurting the people. Bills come whenever they want, and people only get paid every couple of weeks. So a lot of people lives on this constant cycle. Paid, broke, stress, repeat. And a lot of Americans are tired.
Hey, quick question.
Huh? Yeah. What's up?
Why is everything so expensive now, man?
Well, global supply chains.
Okay, but why was the smoothie I just bought $18?
Handcrafted.
It's strawberries.
Artesian strawberries.
And coffee's $9 now.
Premium experience.
What experience?
The experience of surviving.
Wait, what? Okay, why does every checkout screen ask for tip now?
Community support.
I bought a bottle of water.
And the employee turned the iPad around.
Bro, my rent went up $600.
Mm-hmm.
My groceries doubled.
Correct. Yeah.
So how are people supposed to live right now?
Live? Oh, you still think we're using the economy for that? Yo, guys, you got a load of this guy. He still thinks we're doing affordable living.
No, stop.
Seriously? Oh, he's cool. Good luck, loser.
So what do y'all even do then? Mostly vibes and monthly payments.
Today, I just saw this lady's post, and she says it costs $300 a day to live in Houston. And at first, I thought she was crazy. But when I got to thinking about it and thought about what she said, I live in Houston, and when I thought about it, she's exactly right. I mean, that is crazy if you think about it.
It is actually diabolical that even 90K, 100K feels unlivable, especially when you take taxes out. It's like $60,000 a year. After taxes, you're looking at like $2,500 bi-weekly, so like $5,000 a month. With roommates and without roommates, you're still looking at between like $1,600 to $3,000 if you live by yourself. And that's just to like have a roof over your head. Which is crazy because in the entirety time that I've ever made over 6 figures, I've always worked so many side jobs just to like save money. Meanwhile, back when I was like 21, I was making like $30,000 to $40,000 a year being a nurse in South Carolina. Tell me how like I was even surviving on that, and I felt like I was having so much fun, and now like that feels like nothing. I'm not living beyond my means. I have the same car that I've had for 11 years. I feel like I'm buying less groceries, and my groceries still cost way more than I ever did before. Like with Spirit going away, Delta removing their drink and food services, the world is getting far more expensive, and we're getting nothing in return. I don't really know what these billionaires think that they're going to get out of us, because at this point, if we don't have any money to spend, how are we going to buy your products? It's getting to the point where things are like so frustrating. Like I don't want to work in this perpetual cycle of just like the rat race forever. I'm honestly like exhausted. I'm like looking at these jobs that I'm applying to, and it's like I do the math, and when you take out all the taxes, it's like nothing. It almost makes me want to go back into nursing full time, because like I don't know if I can take that pay cut, you know? And that's why everyone's in miserable jobs they don't want to be in, because you'd rather keep the job that you have with more money than get a pay cut role for a job that like you probably are overqualified for, but you want a new position.
There's a debate happening on Twitter right now on 65K to 72,000 living in New York should be considered a financial crime. Now, I think the part that people have to take into consideration is that when we're considering living, like cost of living, livelihood in New York, there's a difference between surviving, living, and thriving. Most of us only know surviving and living, not so much thriving. Most of us. Mind you, that income level needs context. You could survive more closer to live if you don't have no kids, if you don't have no dependents. The moment you got dependents, you're in survival mode, honey. Hello. Like, take me for example, when I was making that kind of salary back in 2019, mind you, this is 2019, so we was to To adjust it for inflation right now, that would probably be like $55,000, right? Because spending power has declined over the last 5 or 6 years. Now, I had a roommate, so me and my best friend, we lived together. I was also getting out of like student loan debt. I was also paying off my debts, like my credit card debt. I was also saving money too. So I definitely was doing more than just surviving. I was more like living. I can't thrive off of that kind of income then, let alone now. And I think that kind of nuance needs to be entered into the conversation, because then we start to set up these really poor expectations of what people should and shouldn't be making. Mind you, now that kind of income, especially if you're college educated and you're on the route of career paths that are in line with the economy, because that's another thing too. Do you have a job that is in line with the economy to get you those kind of income levels? But that's my personal opinion. What y'all think in the comments?
Get ready with us when we talk about how expensive it is to simply exist nowadays.
Let's get into it.
Yeah. But first, moment of silence for the days when health and car insurance was affordable in Michigan.
The good old days. I used to love the perks of being from Michigan, as it was once considered a low-cost living state. But now, things have definitely changed.
It has. Did y'all know that 3 Michigan hospitals are in jeopardy due to Medicaid cuts in Trump's budget?
Cutting Medicaid funding to make room for tax breaks for the wealthy is literally insane. Not to mention, electricity prices even jumping like Jordan in the 87 Slam Dunk contest. Come on, man.
FYI, all this is because y'all president decided to reject the disaster aid for Michigan utilities after the terrible ice storm that we had. Like, who does that? Trump and Republicans made these choices, and we're literally the ones paying for it.
My Michigan people, y'all comment below what costs are hitting y'all the hardest.
If rising prices are affecting you and your loved ones, right now is not the time to stay quiet.
Call your elected officials and demand better.
Right now.
You know, I gotta shout out Casanova Brown again for bringing up this age of disclosure conversation. And I got on here just to share what my experience was being a healthcare worker that lives from paycheck to paycheck. Because I cannot quantify the exact amount, but I do think that a large majority of us healthcare workers are living paycheck to paycheck. And I am not here to compare what I'm going through to anybody else's, but we're all seeing the same thing. We are all seeing the same thing. And I did not know that a lot of people are in the same situation with me in terms of owing back taxes. I felt so embarrassed. And just to show y'all how ridiculous this shit is getting out of hand, I looked at my paycheck. I looked at my last paycheck from the month of March, and I calculated my taxes. I calculated my 401k, which is retirement, and then I calculated my insurance. Between federal tax and state tax, that eats up almost 20% of my gross income. Then after that comes my 401k. I give 10% of my gross income to my 401k. So we're already down almost 30%. And then my insurance and other miscellaneous fees account for another 13%. So when it's all said and done, I only get back a little bit more than half of my paycheck. And I see why they say gross amount, because when you look at your gross amount versus your net amount, it's gonna gross you the fuck out, because I'm like, I look at how much money they are taking from me, and this is bi-weekly. And as a healthcare worker, why am I having to pay for health insurance? I've been in the field as a respiratory therapist for 10 plus years. Why am I having to pay anything for healthcare? I have over $1,000 in my savings, but that's not going to cover all of my expenses for the month if something were to happen to me. So like I said, if something were to happen to me, I only have about 2 weeks of sick time and PTO. And then after that, I do have long-term disability and short-term disability that I get through my employer, but that kicks in. I think that for your short-term or your long-term disability to kick in, you have to at least be disabled for 6 to 8 weeks before that kicks in. There is little safety net left for me. And this is what's making people crash out. As we come to work, we make all this money, and then when we look at everything that you're taking from us, and then you mean to tell me I still owe you at the end of the year? when y'all are taking well over a third of my pay. That's why people don't want to do this shit no more. Because you're working and you're not working to get ahead. You're working and you're moving, but you're like that rat on a hamster wheel. You're going nowhere. I did not know that video was going to do the numbers that it did, but it did those crazy numbers. And like I said, we were all seeing the same thing, that we're living paycheck to paycheck. And there's nothing to be embarrassed about. The only reason why, like I said, I'm not struggling to pay my rent is because I don't have a crazy, exorbitant amount to pay for my rent. But I know people in DC that are paying rents well over $2,000 a month. But like I said, even with a good job, you can still be living paycheck to paycheck with little to zero safety net if something were to happen to you, because I'm in that same position. And I know that a lot of other healthcare workers are in that same position. And don't feel embarrassed when the other motherfuckers want to get on here and be like, oh, I'm not in that situation. Because everybody's situation ain't the same. That's it. That's all. Bye.
Made a post about cybersecurity being $70K. I'm from Cali, and that's super low. That's like a restaurant waiter job. You do realize California is one of the states that is completely out of the ordinary with the average pay rate of what the national average is in America. The median average is $66,560 annually for America. So if you're saying that California is like waiter wages at $70,000, that should tell you just how out of the average reality that California is. So when people say, oh, well, you know, it's not it's, you know, not much money there, it's because your cost of living is extraordinarily high, that there is a reason why a lot of people have actually been emigrating from California to other states. I actually did live in California for a little while, closer to like the, I bounced back and forth for contracts, but there was a place I was staying up in Malibu for a job, and then would chill out near the Pico Robertson area where my some of my family was. Like when you're saying like a plumber in California, yeah, you have to understand the wages out in California, the cost of living is out of whack for the rest of the U.S. You pay $7K a month for rent for apartment in San Diego. See, that should tell you how out of scope it is. Apartments out here, what we consider very expensive, my friends are paying $1,500 to $2,000. If that gives you an idea of just how out of whack the costs of living are in California. And I say this as someone who has family in California, and most of them have left that state because of the cost of living.
Okay, quick math for today's video. So minimum wage in the United States is about $7.25 an hour. That's what it is also in Kentucky, where I live. If you work full-time, this is like 40-hour work week, $15,080 a year before taxes, and then about $1,256 a month before taxes. Looking at rent, average one-bedroom apartment in the United States is about $1,500 a month. So before taxes are even taken out, rent alone is already more than your entire income. After taxes, you're realistically bringing home closer to like $1,000, $1,100 a month, meaning you're already hundreds of dollars short just trying to pay your rent. And that's for one person. This is not even taking into account people with kids who have even more expenses, more food to buy, childcare, clothes, school costs, everything increases. And realistically, people with kids also don't even need a one bedroom. They need more space, which means even higher rent. And even if you have a car, which you need in most places, you're lucky if it's paid off and you don't have a car payment. But at the very least, you have gas, maintenance, insurance. And people are like, oh, okay, well, there's assistance. Okay, let's do the math on that too. Even if someone qualifies for like SNAP, like food assistance, you know, food stamps, the maximum benefit per month is around like $300 for someone, for one individual. This helps with food, but it doesn't pay your rent, your utilities, your gas, insurance, anything else. So let's look at it realistically. Rent is about $1,500 a month. Income after taxes is like $1,100. Food stamps help with food, but your rent alone is about $400 short. That's before electric, before the water, before your phone bill, before transportation, before your health care, before any emergencies. So even with federal assistance, the math still doesn't work because it's not a budgeting problem. It's a wage problem. And this is best case scenario. It only gets worse from here. So the fact that there's people in office actively voting against raising the federal minimum wage is mind-boggling to me. because you cannot survive off of the current minimum wage. It is impossible.
I live in Detroit, Michigan, and by the end of the month, I literally need $4,000, and I can't even afford that after 2 jobs. My rent in itself is $1,700 for the month. My electric bill is $300. Groceries for the month cost over $600. And now that I'm thinking about it, I literally didn't even factor in that gas costs $5 per gallon right now. I have to pay my phone bill, I have to pay the Wi-Fi bill, I have to pay for car insurance, I have to pay for my medical insurance. I literally rent a 1-bedroom apartment in Detroit. Why can't I afford to live off of 2 jobs? But yeah, Detroit is cheap, right?